Let's go. Like and share, like and share, like and share. Happy fall, everybody. God, I love fall. Fall is my favorite. %. All right, let's go ahead and kill the outro intro music. All right, folks, welcome to Inside the Numbers. It's Wednesday with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. The best place to follow us, I mean, we're everywhere, of course, but the best place to follow us is one right down here. peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, I have a clip from War Room. If you missed it this morning, I think it's pretty important. I did reveal something from the study that we're doing right now. So I guess the cat's a little bit out of the bag, which is fine. I did it on purpose. I just will say this as we go over some of this news for the day and how Republicans repeatedly step on themselves. The hypothesis that I had surrounding political violence was that this may be the other manifestation or a modern or the new evolution of this manifestation of really what is this a manifestation of what is the same thing that we saw beginning in the 60s, as most people would agree, unless they're just totally left-wing and slanted and trying to rewrite history, that we saw with 60s and school shootings and stuff like that. And I will say this, but I don't want to jump too much out in front of this thing. But what I will say is this. While there is a component of what I thought would be this kind of lost souls among young men particularly, who are for the same reason they join a gang or they go looking for notoriety and some kind of, fame in a weird, twisted way. And they'll conduct them. They'll carry out the most heinous acts and kill children and mass shootings and of different varieties in nature. While there is a component of that, what I think we're learning is that that is just one element of this, that something greater is capturing and utilizing too. Just like they would utilize other lost soul communities. All right. I can't explain too much of this until we go over it more. But what I'm finding out is that it's not, we went into this thing when YouGov did a snap poll, and it's, there was more people on the left who, for instance, thought that it was okay to commit acts of political violence against some of your political opponents, depending on what they may have said or done. Whereas on the right, it appears there's very little who believe that that is true, that you can do that. It's certainly appears to be tied to belief, religious identification, stuff like that. I'm less concerned with the disparity in those percentages than I am with who makes up those percentages. Okay. Let me try to explain what I'm saying. And I gave an example, which I could just play the clip and roll it, but this isn't just the wayward soul, the lost soul. This is various parts of our society by social class that are infected with this thing. And it's worse than I thought it was going to be. I don't know what the answer is yet. I don't even think we have a full understanding of it yet. I don't. But I'm just saying, from what I'm seeing, what I said I'm banning, I 100% stand by, and you can draw whatever you can from that. When it comes to some of the generations that are later and have already been enveloped with those belief systems, and they're ingrained in their personalities now. I don't see how you fix it. I don't think there is a way to fix it. And when you think of somebody like Charlie, he was trying to reach younger people for a reason, because I think he knew, well, I don't think, I know from my conversations with Charlie that there were some people, unfortunately, that were likely unreachable, and that we were going to need a generational shift in this country to change things. And he was trying to reach those younger people in order to do that and help carry that out. Someone's got to win and someone's got to lose. I don't know how else to put it. It's the same idea or the same mindset. Now, I can't even use the phrase values, because some of these people are expressing things that are the antithesis to what I view to be values. Values, in my mind, insinuates something that's inherently good, a belief system that's inherently good and keeps you on a moral path. Well, let's just call them belief systems. They're the same belief system that makes you think, or allows you to think, or rationalize, or justify that it's okay to twist the law to put your political opponents in a 6x6 cell for the rest of their life. That same viewpoint, those same beliefs that are leading people to believe that it's okay to be able to hurt your political opponents, because one hypothesis that is coming true is this, that this is being driven by somebody or something or some institution or some narrative pusher, whatever it may be, which we don't know of all yet. I mean, we're trying to figure that out by, like, where do you get your information from? What are your sources? How are you raised? How did you grow up? I mean, there's only one study. I can't think of it all. You know, this is going to need more study. I'm telling you, it will need more study. Somewhere they get this seed planted, and then from that seed, other things are watering it. And it's getting nurtured and growing on places online, lots online. And that seed is this idea that the political other, is morally bad and a physical threat to them, to you, whoever we're talking about here. And then from that, they get to rationalize in their minds that it's okay to do harm against those people. Now, here's the scary shit. The stuff they're hearing that plants these seeds is often false. So the person that I brought up on War Room believes in the Stephen King lie, which is that Charlie Kirk called for the stoning of gays, and that he also doesn't like single mothers. Just because what? I mean, where did they get that from? Well, very clearly, the media did a lot of that, by the way. We found examples of that. But also online on Reddit posts, which Mark Mitchell and I are scanning through like crazy, on Discord channels, and on videos on TikTok. There are numerous altered videos insinuating that Charlie wanted to stone gays and that he disapproved the single moms, even though what he's really saying is simple and true. If you raise a child in a single parent household, that child is much more likely to grow up in poverty, much less likely to succeed. And somehow that gets taken into some weird context where he's bigoted against gay people, and he's somehow in a weird way bigoted against women. That person is a professional class person that I'm discussing with on War Room. That is not some loser who didn't graduate high school, or graduated high school like Charlie's assassin, headed with a scholarship to college where he freaking failed to blend in. Jesus, Laura, my God, Jesus. Oh my Lord. I'm live. Hold on, let me let her know I'm literally live. That's not a person who is struggling to deal with life, or has been confronted with in the case of Charlie's assassin, their inadequacies. This is a successful person who had a rough childhood, by the way, absolutely a rough childhood, but I would call having one parent who's a alcoholic addict and which shared with his teenage daughter, who grew up thinking dad was cool and mom was a bitch because mom knew it was wrong and was trying to get to be the sane person in the house. And then, she became the bad guy. This is very common, by the way, in some of these generations from like mine and like 10 to 15 years down from like millennials. This is a common thing that happened in households across America. Mom was the bad guy. And then the marital issues that stemmed out of that were she blamed them on mom, not dad, for being a deadbeat pot smoker who drank too much, crazy stuff. So like she had a weird childhood, but right now, not weird, an unhealthy childhood. She was raised in an unhealthy home. Now she isn't someone who's struggling in social status, so struggling with it. I mean, financially, any of that. She is doing well, works at one of the biggest financial institutions in the country, has a very good paying job, and thinks that Charlie deserved it. Why? Because he called for stoning gay people. And because he didn't particularly, and this is what hit her, given what she feels was her dad's best attempt to raise her as a single parent, Charlie's rhetoric towards single parenthood. From that, in her mind, she's unmarried, by the way, I will say that. From that, in her mind, Charlie deserved to be killed. Or at least, maybe not deserved, but had it coming. Whether some of them admit they think they applaud it, or they think that it was deserved, the overarching theme that you'll get people to at least admit is that they had it coming. This is a much bigger problem than I expected it was going to be. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know that there is an answer. I don't. At the current moment, I'm pretty much convinced that that Charlie was right, and this has to be changed with a generational change. It has to be a generational change, and that one side is going to win and another side is going to lose. They don't want to coexist. That's the truth. To them, it's not political discourse. And the reason why I went on Bannon is because during the ceremony yesterday, I leaned on over to my buddy and was like, this is beautiful and Charlie deserved every minute of it, every second of it. But the fact of the matter is, this is a civilian award. And with what we're seeing, this is a war. Whether it's a traditional war or not, this is a war. Less than 24 hours later, Politico proves my point. All right. But before we get there, I do want to play, let's just call him Harry regurgitate. I don't even know what to call this guy. We have a show yesterday. We discussed this, and he's got to go on and talk about it. The show yesterday, in case you missed it, I just want to have a quick flashback before we go. And then we have Jim Carlin stopping by to talk about the latest from John Solomon, which again, this is part of the same problem. We're all talking about the same problem. These people they have grown up, folks. They become part of powerful spying agencies. They run for Congress. They go work at some of the most powerful financial institutions in the country. We're not just talking about some loser who went to Utah State and with a scholarship and didn't live up to mommy's expectations. Like, that's not what we're talking about. Is it part of it? Sure, but it is not the sum total of it. And Republicans are doing nothing to defend their people, including them damn selves. Here we have their role to conduct oversight over some of the most powerful agencies and bureaus in the world. They are the most powerful in the world. And they don't do that. In fact, they constantly rubber stamp the authority for them to use this power, even when they abuse it. And they do not a damn thing about it. So how are they defending anybody? But before we do, let's just reverse for a second here about what we talked about yesterday, which was that, in a nutshell, I warned Democrats redistricting can turn around and bite them in their ass to let Texas go, because if they don't and they counter with California, Republicans will counter with other states. And because there are more red states than blue states, you will lose on net a massive number of seats just from redrawing lines. They didn't listen because Gavin Newsom wants to run for president and because Barack Obama wants a Democratic Congress to protect him from the FBI. So they didn't listen, and they went full steam ahead with this. And not only is their issue, Florida didn't even get in this yet. Not only is their issue that they're going to lose this battle as it stands right now, and they could have let Texas go. This is important. They could have let Texas go because Texas was the benchmark used for Texas by Republicans was Trump's performance, and they underperformed Donald Trump. So Democrats should have just been smart and let it go, because Republicans are not going to perform like Donald Trump in those districts anyway. So I digress. Not only are they going to lose on these districts, but also their polling is not enough to ensure that they get a sizable majority, even if they were to get one. All right. Now, he's going to say a few things here I'm going to have to correct when I come back, because he's in typical Harry Enton fashion. He does apples to oranges all the time. So we're going to have to correct it a little bit when we come back. And then once we're done with this, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a follow-up from yesterday. Once we're done with this, we'll go into the double standard we're talking about with political violence, which I think you can already see for yourself if you have half a brain, which I know my audience does. All right. Let's run this clip real quick.
2018, right? Because that's sort of the baseline. That was, of course, the first Trump term. That was where Democrats were sort of keeping pace. You go back to April, look at the generic congressional ballot. What you see? You see +3 Democrats in 2025 in April. You see +3 Democrats back in April of 2017. Now jump over to this side of the screen. What happens? Well, the Democrats are no longer keeping pace with the pace that they were setting back in 2017, 2018. You look back in 2017, you saw that the Democrats had leaped up to an 8-point advantage. I remember covering this. I remember a lot of folks, including myself, saying, you know what, Republicans look pretty decent right now in terms of the fact that they had the House, they had the Senate, they had the presidency, but things were likely going to flip. And I was looking for the same signs this year. The bottom line is it hasn't happened, Kate Baldwin. It hasn't happened. Democrats have stayed basically steady. They have fallen off the pace. Democrats were way out ahead back in 2017 on the generic congressional ballot. And now we're basically looking at Democrats ahead. But again, they are so far in back of the pace that they set back there. And so I think what a lot of folks are seeing, folks like myself, are saying, wait a minute, given what we might be seeing in redistricting, is this +3 going to be enough, Kate Baldwin?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. One change from that cycle is also this mid-decade redistricting effort that we've been covering so much. You add that in, and what do you get?
All right. So before they go on and on about it, I will just say this. I mean, she brings it up. She corrects him. The fact of the matter is, it's okay to compare where their national standing was in the polling, but it is not the same map. 18 was a more difficult map for Democrats. 20 was a more difficult map for Democrats. 22 is the map that we are talking about before Texas and before California and before Missouri and apparently in a whole bunch of other states that are going to follow suit if Gavin Newsom continues with this, which he is. And Barack Obama has now come out with this. So Democrats appear to be on a train to derail themselves. It must be a lot like the high-speed train, the high-speed rail system that Gavin promised you out in California. All right, so a disaster is what I mean by that. All right, so we're looking at the 22 map, and the fact of the matter is, +3 probably, if there were no changes made, probably still would be enough for Democrats to retake the House. It would. They lost the popular vote by more than that margin in 2022, yet they still did well enough to be able to claw some Senate seats back that they thought they were going to lose, such as in Nevada and Georgia. And at the same, and by the way, other races across the country, like the Arizona governorship, which they, throw a little hanky panky in there, and you wind up getting a couple others on top of it. But the House was somewhat different. It's not how Republicans wanted to perform. They underperformed because they threw a lot of their MAGA candidates under the bus, thinking they were going to win seats in Rhode Island and Connecticut and in Virginia. I kid you not. They did. J.R. Majewski, John Gibbs, a whole bunch of others. So it is probably still good enough if you don't count what happened with Texas. All right. So with Texas, different story, which is going to cause a snowball, but whatever. I just wanted to point out that she actually did say something that is halfway intelligent. All right, let's get back to it.
Okay, so we add that and we take a look at the national picture, but then we, of course, taking a look at the state legislators, right? They are potentially changing things, and there are two things that are going on here. First off, net mid-decade redistricting gains. If both sides max out at this point, there are more Republican gains possible than Democratic gains. Yes, the Democrats might try to counter a Texas and a California.
Yes.
But you go along in the different states, and basically Democrats run out of room where Republicans are able to gain and gain and gain. If both sides max out, we're probably looking at a GOP gain of +7 House seats. That doesn't even take into account the potential gutting of the VRA that is right now going to be in front of the Supreme Court. If you add that in, you could be looking...
The Voting Rights Act.
What? Yes, exactly right. The Voting Rights Act. If you add that in, then you could be looking about adding 10, 12, 15, 17 on top of this 7 seats. So I think a lot of folks like myself are looking at this. We're seeing, hey, wait a minute. Those...
All right, we don't care about what he says he's seeing the rest of. I mean, obviously, it's obvious what he's going to say, right? Very kind of unprofessional, her sitting there slurping on her coffee in the middle. This cable news. It's not a podcast like mine. It's cable news. You're not supposed to use over there. What about the VRA? I mean, come on, lady. Jesus. But anyway, that's true. Now, Republicans should not bank on the Supreme Court stepping up and doing the right thing. We talked about this yesterday. That is an outdated law. There is no reason for that, especially with the independent commissions in vast number of states, like you're just going to do it anyway. So, there's that. So, and by the way, he didn't bring up Florida at all. So when he says there are gains that Republicans can make, it can get really ugly for Democrats. And look, I try to be fair. I normally pound on Republicans day after day, pounded on Democrats yesterday. The Republicans are notoriously stupid enough to snatch that defeat from the hands of victory. But here, Democrats are making that mistake, and I think they already did. And we'll have to see how it goes. But, I mean, if Trump gets out there and generates a little bit more turnout than what is expected in a midterm cycle, Republicans could defy history here in the same way that Democrats defied history. And that's how they did it. They did it through redistricting, right? Everyone knew that it was going to have an impact, and Republicans would lose some of their structural advantage that they had prior to redistricting. But nobody realized the amount, how significant that would be, the amount of seats we were talking about. The truth is, without the counting of illegal residents, Democrats would not be able to win the House of Representatives. That's a fact. That is a fact. All right. So that, when they go on and on about how Republicans are going to gut this act and gut that act, the fact of the matter is Democrats have a systemic handicap in the system. It is a structural advantage far superior to what Republicans had in 2020 that, in fact, they never should have had to begin with. And soon, it'll be really difficult for them to win the Electoral College as well. All right? So that's just the reality. And that's because of who they are and what they chose to make their party, which is what we're going to talk about now a little bit. Listen, whoever did this, I just want to say, you have done a serious injustice to the memory of Charlie Kirk, and you have done a serious injustice to the positive things that we might have been able to take out of yesterday and build on because of your own personal ambition or your own personal gripe. Maybe what your little feelings were hurt. Stop being a little bitch and move on. Instead, you run a Politico like a freaking spineless piece of shit, and you dump a bunch of text messages that should never have been written. The fact of the matter is true that these are stupid things, vile things that people should never say. You're never going to catch me saying something like this in a text message. I'm not defending what's in the messages. I'm saying, one, doing it for your own personal gain when there are far bigger things at stake makes you a piece of shit. And two, it's a major double standard how this is even being reported right now. Watch as I put this up, the graphics that Politico made with this, okay? If you reset this thing, which I'll show you, you will see how much effort they put into this. Watch this. Look at all these things. Look at that. Oh my God. Little pop-ups. Wow. So cool. You wrote a JavaScript code to do that, or did you just have high charts do it for you? Unbelievable. Did you get this with Jay Jones? No. They didn't even report it. It had to be put out by the National Review. And by the way, in that case, that was somebody who was sympathetic to the Republican cause who leaked this. This is either a person who's a narcissist who puts themselves above everyone else and what the greater issues are right now in this country with political violence. So they did this, or they're a Democrat who got into the text messages. We don't know. Nobody knows. I'll tell you right now, the person who's being blamed for it, I have been told now by two people it was not him. And I'll speak to him my damn self. But I already know from a good friend that he said this is not him. So I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, the job he's got right now in the Trump administration makes it a little bit unbelievable to me that he has the time to do this. I don't think he does. He's been running his ass off. But anyway, I love Hitler. This is a great way to put a target on the back of young Republicans and groups that represent not young Republicans as an organization, but Turning Point, right? All of these other groups that represent Republican organizations that go after the youth vote. Everybody in media knows that is assassination rhetoric. They don't give a shit. In the same way they know that they act as a contagion, okay? A contagion for follow-up copycat mass shootings. They don't give a shit. It gets them what they want. What do they want? A narrative to get rid of the Second Amendment. In this case, what do they want? Well, if the results of the study are to be, considered at all, some of these people don't give a shit, and they do want you dead if you're on the right. That's just a fact. I'm sorry. And the second part, of course, is the narrative. They want to cover for the narrative. I have never polled a young Republican. I don't mean by organization. I mean by like the young right, the young MAGA that I got so proficient in polling. I haven't polled a single one who said they support Hitler. Not one. But there's also the entire point made by the vice president, which is as vile and as stupid as these things are for you to say in a chat, and you're an idiot. I mean, are you a noob to the game of politics? I mean, why would you do that? And I understand the context. I do understand the context. It doesn't matter. I'm never going to be caught saying things like this again because I don't say them. But it is true. There is truth to what JD Vance is saying, and that is the ultimate goal, one of the ultimate goals of why the legacy media prints these stories and writes it while ignoring other stories. And that's exactly what the vice president said. He said, this is far worse than anything said in a college group chat. And I got to be honest with you, that is like, again, because of course, what's the insinuation here? Young Republicans, right? College level Republicans. What's the insinuation here? Again, Charlie Kirk deserved it. Because this is the kind of group of people that Charlie Kirk was around. I will tell you right now, if you ever texted Charlie with something like this, he's going to freaking block you. You will never text Charlie. You would never text Charlie Kirk again after that because he will block you and he will tell you never to. He probably wouldn't even. He might, he may not. But if you were to send shit like this, saying that you love Hitler, even jokingly, saying something bad, anti-Semitic about Jews, raping women, Charlie would have blocked you. You'd be out of his circle, and you'd be out of his circle for good. You're never going on the Charlie Kirk show again. You're never being invited to a Turning Point conference. You're out. This does not reflect at all any of the messages I have ever had with Charlie Kirk. And these people did him and his memory and the ceremony yesterday a disgusting disservice by writing things like this and by leaking it for your own personal gain. But the vice president makes a good point. The guy who said it could become the AG of Virginia. I refuse to join the pearl clutching when powerful people call for political violence. And listen, I'm not saying this is about whataboutism. What about this one? What about that one? I have been saying since the story about Jay Jones dropped that if this was a Republican candidate for state office in a upcoming election, not only would that candidate be forced to drop out of the race, every Republican around him in and outside of the state who's in any Republican who was in anybody would be forced to denounce him. The endorsements would be forced to be retracted, rescinded, and Jay Jones would be forced to resign and be replaced by somebody else. Suspend his campaign, not resign, but suspend his campaign. And yet, none of that happened. The Democratic nominee and the frontrunner for the actual gubernatorial election hasn't said a damn word. Nobody has rescinded his endorsement. Here he's fantasizing about killing the two little children and his political opponent and killing his political opponent. Which is worse? A bunch of young activists going on and on saying stupid shit that they should never have said, as bad as it is, or actual fantasizing about the murdering of political opponents by the man who is running for the office of top cop in one of the most powerful states in the country. This is not close. When we're discussing this entire issue of political violence in America, a bunch of stupid idiot, young kids, and they're kids to me, I'm 44, a bunch of stupid idiots, and I'm not saying I'm not taking away the responsibility. They should grow the F up, take that responsibility, take the L. Actually, they should just get lost. Like, honestly, you're a distraction. Just get lost. You said dumbass shit you should never have said to your wife personally, to yourself in the mirror, in the bathroom. If you're in this game, you have to be better. And you did serious damage to the cause with this stupid bullshit. But Democrats get different. Right. I'm doing an entire show about it right now. It's not to whine about it. It's to say simply, how the hell do you not know that by now? Shocker. Newsflash. Breaking news. Democrats have different standards than Republicans. But this is the issue as I'm looking at the data that we're collecting. One is dumbass talk from a bunch of inconsequential activists, who aren't going to cause somebody to put a rifle in someone's hand and go shoot them from a rooftop. The other one is actually saying that he wants to do it himself and he's running for office. Which tells me our data is 100% correct. This is not a problem that's isolated to a few morons who watch TikTok videos and sit home playing with themselves all day because they never had a girlfriend. That's not what this is. We have people who are otherwise successful, otherwise set up for success, professional class people going into powerful positions, going into positions of influence, who are in social circles where the ideas, actions, things, what breeds political violence to them, the ideas that do, are mainstream. And the media doesn't give two shits about it. The MSNBC segment on Morning Joe was really focused on trying to push him out because they still want to win the race, not because they think what he said was bad. You best believe when I'm telling you, people sitting behind the desks at these cable news broadcasts believe this shit. Their lawyers believe it. Their financial advisors believe it. Their friends in DC believe it. Their friends in DC who work for Main Justice believe it. That's the problem, not the stupid morons in Politico, even though what they said is dumb. And unfortunately, we're going to have to listen to this for another 24 hours, and they'll always be able to bring it up because Republicans are super good at stepping on their own toes and falling for BS every single time. It's tragic, really is. If we had time, I did want to go through the New Jersey latest numbers from New Jersey, but again, what I really more concerned with the New Jersey numbers is I'm concerned with the in-person early vote, which I believe begins in 9 days. All right, that will tell me or not tell me whether Republicans really have a shot here. I will tell you this. I do know my buddies, as some of you may obviously know, there's some collab projects I am working on, but there's also one, which is the National Association of Independent Pollsters. We talk about different things that we're going to go and do. I said I won't poll New Jersey until the end of the month if the Public Polling Project funds. As it turns out, several of our colleagues, our peers, are in the field in New Jersey. It is very early, but it does look tight. It does. So Mark had got it done. I think he had Cheryl by 5, right? We went over it. He came on the show on Monday. But he did do it briefly, and I mean but I think 2/3 was post-debate interviews. There could be that going on. There could be other stuff that was going on. But unfortunately, again, here we go with another national news story that, Democrats are going to be able to use to distract from the real issue that Republicans want to talk about. Republicans want, to focus on. All right. I'm going to play my clip from Roar Room. We have a guest coming on to talk about this John Solomon story, which I can't, just unbelievable. This is what happens when Congress doesn't do their job. And you're not there to rubber stamp their powers to keep us safe. You're there to conduct oversight. I'll keep myself safe. That's what guns are for. Whoop, whoop. I don't feel comfortable with these people having these powers anymore. I just don't. I don't see the purpose. They're abusing them way too much. The amount of metadata collection, the phone record collection is outrageous. This is outrageous. They spied on Dianne Feinstein when she was looking into torture at the CIA. They broke into their offices with her special committee and spied on those Democrat and Republican senators. Bipartisan committee just broke in, took their shit. Now over this J6 nonsense, they spied on these members of Congress to find dirt, to find something to thwart Donald Trump from running for president again. Because the timing is just too damn coincidental. I mean, we don't give these people the benefit of the doubt anymore. All right, but let me shut up and let this clip play because I do know Jim will be on here pretty soon. All right? All right, we'll be back. Let me take a little bit of a break. Don't forget, you're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Like the videos, like. Links are down below, but the best place to follow us is on Locals. It's right here, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Let me play this exchange with Steve and I'll be right back. All right. This is it in a nutshell.
He's shocked. He's shocked because this is not, Barris nails it. This is not a political debate anymore. You're not going to change any of those people by debate. This was the This was the charm of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, and they assassinated the best of us because Charlie Kirk still believed you could go into that lion's den and you could, in free debate about the marketplace of ideas, that you could literally change the minds of some of these young people. Now, maybe on the margins you can, and Charlie was doing a yeoman's effort, but he's also bringing together people that have been kind of raised maybe as conservatives and fallen away. That's, to me, his power, was bringing that back. But you're not going to debate this out. This is not a political debate. And you just see how the left works. They set up a phony committee. They had collaborations like Liz Cheney on it. They went and got 30 million phone records of everybody that called into the White House. Why? So they could go back and prove the citizens that called in and talked to somebody on the staff or President Trump or whatever were guilty of a crime, and not proving that crime because they got beaten 22 midterms. They then had the FBI. They then tried to dump it into the 24 election. These people are pure evil, and you can't compromise with them, and you can't debate it out, Barris.
Charlie was trying to reach people before they got to that point, and but literally, I mean, he had his Asian tour when he was his trip over to Asia. And when he was coming back, he was getting ready to do a video for my son's friend who loves him and was going to college. That's by the way, the kind of person that Charlie Kirk was, just because I asked him to. But he was getting them younger. That's not what we're talking about here, Steve. I'm talking about people who are already immersed in their views, and they're going to go to work at these financial institutions. They're going to go to work at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They're going to go to work at CIA. They're going to go run for Congress. For folks, like, this is what I'm trying to explain to people. This is not fringe. This is already in the ranks of people who hold immense power. Look at the text messages from the Attorney General candidate for the Democratic candidate for Attorney General in Virginia. This is what I'm trying to tell you is this is who they are, and you have to respond accordingly. Senators and congressmen, Republicans in Congress, their job is to conduct oversight of those agencies. God forbid if any of these fanatics end up there, which they have. Yeah. And what have they done, Steve? They've done nothing. And now look, your last segment with John.
Barris, hang on for 1 second. We'll take a short break. Richard Barris is going to stick with us. Hold on.
Whoops. I said, and that was the segment with Steve. My bad. I muted myself while I vaped, so you couldn't hear me vape. And I said, that was my segment with Steve that I was telling you about if you missed it. And here is the article by Solomon that I'm referencing here, because I really do think this is all the same mindset. Abuse the law, abuse powerful spying tools. Basically, guys, defeat your political opponents at any cost. And when you fail to do that, what is the final option? We should not be surprised by this. We reviewed one take, which basically said about the situation, because we're asking about Charlie being assassinated and Trump's attempted assassination. And when did that happen? When did it happen? When the lawfare failed. When the lawfare failed. When they failed to attempt to put him in a jail for the rest of his natural life at his age, somebody took a shot at him. Yep. That is in some weird way, not logical, but in some weird way, you can understand the logic of people who have this mindset, who think that this is, hate to use this phrase because, man, it's got a horribly negative connotation. But this is the final, I'm not going to use the S word, the final answer to a problem that they failed to solve in the other less violent, because I would argue being arrested at 6 o'clock in the morning with CNN pointing a camera in your face is somewhat its own an act of violence. But I mean, true violence, that is the last resort of the tyrant. You can't get your political opponents any other way. You can't beat them at the ballot box. You can't eventually beat them at the juror box, which is not where your political disagreements should be decided, but that's what they did. Now, by the way, don't give me this shit. Well, what about Trump? That's called accountability and justice. Prosecuting people who abused the law and engaged in lawfare is not lawfare itself. That's called accountability and justice. So don't send me those stupid ass comments. I don't want to read them. And if you do, I'm just going to ignore them. That's stupid. You have to be stupid to believe that. But when all else fails, what are the recourse to people like that feel they have? Let's back it up, though, before those shots were fired. Here's plan A. All right. John Solomon got this. This is just a huge story. I cannot stress how big of a story this is. All right. Congress collected 30 million lines of phone data in the Trump J6 probe, raising civil liberty concerns. Not that Congress did it. Wait till you see where it went. More details continue to emerge about the collusion between Democrats in Congress and Biden's weaponized DOJ in targeting Trump. And the reason I wanted to talk to Jim about this is because Jim was running against an incumbent that has since decided she will no longer run. And I wanted his take on, not only why he was running and stuff, but how much of this is on his radar. Because I feel like, guys, a huge problem with Republicans in the Senate particularly, but everywhere, is that they allow this stuff to happen. Whether they're complicit or not is irrelevant, isn't it? It's totally irrelevant. They do not challenge the people who abuse their authority. All right. And what is it, 1252? I honestly don't know if he's having an issue or what. All right, here we go. Congressional investigators collected a stunning 30 million lines of phone data mapping contacts between conservatives in the Trump White House in the name of investigating the January 6th Capitol breach. A massive dragnet that raises civil liberty concerns about the lack of limits on the ability of lawmakers to snoop on Americans' private phone calls. By the way, one of the biggest supporters of FISA, Lindsey Grahamnesty himself, Lady Lindsey Grahamnesty, the warmonger, he was spied on. The mountainous collection of phone records were revealed to the FBI, led by Chris Wray, in late 2020 by former Representative Adam Kinzinger, a GOP member of the Democrat-run House January 6 Select Committee. We all know who Adam is. He's a never-Trumper, a liar who pretended that he was Tea Party and super MAGA conservative. As it turns out, he's none of those things. He's the textbook example of like a generation of veterans that grow up with brass on their chests that I tell you to worry about all the time when it comes to running for office, because these people are authoritarians who end up being bitches of the military industrial complex. They make a ton of money from it. And then when they go against their voters to the point when they know they're unpopular and they cannot get reelected, they run away like little bitches like Adam Kinzinger did. And they evade accountability at the ballot box. They're the worst kind of politician. The cash was offered to the Bureau on the eve of the 2024 president. Well, let me just say why that is. But real quick. Because if we have politicians doing that all of the time, we don't have a representative government. The cash was offered to the Bureau on the eve of the 2024 presidential election as evidence without requiring a warrant, according to the FBI document memorializing the offer that was reviewed by Just the News. The memo says Kinzinger told the FBI that the phone data had been collected by then former Representative Denver Riggleman, an ex-Republican who was a staffer on Capitol Hill committee and who later helped Hunter Biden's legal team in its efforts to cast doubt on the laptop belonging to Joe Biden's son. Let me explain to you what is happening here. You have Kinzinger, the turncoat traitor piece of shit, coordinating with somebody who helped lie to the country about Hunter Biden's laptop being Russian disinformation. Of course, we now know that was a lie. It was 100% Hunter Biden's, along with all of the disgusting shit on it, what appears to me to be 15 and 16-year-old Eastern European prostitutes smoking crack and having sex for money. That's virtuous Adam Kinzinger, ladies and gentlemen, who's so moral he can't support Donald Trump and his agenda. Congressional powers used to conduct lawfare against Trump. The FBI memo does not reveal whether the Bureau ever took Kinzinger up on his offer, but it does reveal the sheer magnitude of a phone surveillance project the Democrats ran by using congressional subpoenas to gather phone records about Americans' contacts with the Trump White House. I'll tell you right now, I'm in there. I have to be. I know I am. The White House called after the 2020 election to talk about, whether the legality has this been, not even legality, but the precedent of whether something what Bannon was putting together happened in the past, and also to educate them on how ballots are counted in various states, because they honestly did not know the details of how ballots were processed. And also, for instance, the study we did in Michigan. I believe I spoke to Mark Meadows about that when he was still the chief of staff. So I know I'm in there. This is outrageous. Kinzinger told the FBI that the J6 committee, quote, collected and linked a substantial amount of telephone data and noted the FBI may already possess such data. While former Congressman Denver Riggleman worked with the select committee, Riggleman, had a contact and was able to obtain toll information, including for White House root or switchboard members via congressional subpoenas. The FBI agents wrote in their memo summarizing the offer. All right. And here you do not have wrongdoing starting with the FBI, to be very clear. It started with people like Adam Kinzinger and Democrats in Congress. And with the switchboard, that's just how it works. You get a call from the White House. They're like, please hold for Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. That's how it goes. GOP senators, congressmen, and other leaders targeted. It was revealed last week that Special Counsel Jack Smith and the Biden-era FBI collected the private phone records of 8 Republican senators and 1 GOP House member as of his investigation into the Capitol riot of January 6, 2021. And the funny thing here is, guys, Lady Lindsey Graham, led the committee that was in charge of certifying the vote. And he, in fact, did vote to certify the vote. And yet, they still did this. How do we know now? How do we know now that Lady Lindsey's flip-flop? And I told you a personal story about a donor who spoke with Lindsey personally, who told him, we all know the Democrats cheated, but our hands are tied on this one. What tied your hands, Lady Lindsey? What'd they hear? What'd they find out? You guys think about this stuff? Because that's how they do it. The Hoover model. For those who don't know what I'm referencing, J. Edgar Hoover was notorious for putting together large files of blackmail material that he would then use to get members of Congress and even U.S. presidents in line. And God forbid they ever threatened his beloved FBI. Those files were always threatened to be pulled. Roosevelt, you got a problem with the FBI? I'm going to tell the country your wife is a lesbian who's sleeping with in the residency of the White House. Think the country's ready to hear that yet? Martin Luther King, you accept that Peace Prize, and we're going to send these tapes to your wife. Guess what? Martin Luther King did accept the prize anyway, and tapes were delivered to his wife, and she had to listen to her husband have sex with another woman. But he had the balls to do it anyway. How'd he end up again? How did MLK's story end again? Somebody refresh me, please. Refresh my memory. The FBI's Arctic Frost investigation also targeted dozens of GOP officials and organizations, according to documents released by Republican Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley in September. The newly released memo on Kinzinger and Riggleman was recently uncovered by current FBI Director Kash Patel and has garnered significant attention inside the Bureau because of the timing of the contact between the agents and the former lawmaker in December of 2023. By the way, I haven't said this publicly yet, and I'm not going to offer very much information about it, but I will say this. I think I do owe Kash Patel a little bit of gratitude for looking into something for me, which he knows what I'm talking about. When you need something, this seems like a very I'm not even saying, like, when it's time for them to do their job, Kash makes sure it gets done. So, like, God forbid there's ever an issue that they know about beforehand, or at least do know about beforehand. When I tell you these guys move like that, man, they move like that. And, my entire family was very appreciative. All right, back to this. I just thought that was worth saying because it's true. And I'm always so very critical of the FBI. I've been very critical of Kash, and, I got to say, I mean, he was right there. All right. By the time Kinzinger had already left Congress and the committee he worked for had ended its probe a year earlier. He's talking about after this Kash Patel, made this, information public, right? And of course, he's been he garnered significant attention inside the Bureau because of the timing of the contact between the agents and the former lawmaker in December of 2023. By that time, Kinzinger had already left Congress, and the committee he worked for had ended its probe a year earlier. But the 2024 presidential election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden was heating up, with the first presidential primaries just weeks away from starting. Look at how early they were all over this shit. This is totally outrageous. Outrageous. You cannot have a free society and free and fair elections with a deep state blob this interested in and meddling in our elections. You can't do it. Right now, I find domestic institutions to be more of a threat to our democracy than any foreign intervention or interference. As far as I can tell, the only poll question I ever asked that suggests, if not overwhelmingly proves, that some level of interference changed the outcome of presidential election had nothing to do with the Russians or the Chinese or this or that. It had to do with the federal government in the United States of America. And that, of course, is the Riggleman and Kinzinger lie about the Hunter Biden laptop, regarding which significant percentages of voters polled post-election, post-election, indicated to us that in fact would have changed their vote. So despite China's effort to exploit, which the FBI knows about, despite China's effort to exploit unsolicited mail-in ballots to the benefit of Joe Biden, despite them unleashing a deadly virus on the world that just coincidentally appears to be designed to kill Trump supporters in Florida, right? Despite all of this, despite all of that, still, that Hunter Biden laptop story, if only the voters knew the truth, could have tipped the scales, could have tipped the balance of the election. Agents noted that Kinzinger seemed eager to help the FBI at that point, and that Congress had not figured out what to do with the massive collection of data. Quote, Kinzinger indicated that Riggleman may never have received direction on what to do with the toll data, which included approximately 30 million lines of data, the FBI memo stated. It's important, I think, to note that the FBI memo actually cites 30 million lines of data. Folks, that is a tremendous amount of data. Tremendous. All right. The agents who interviewed him said that she would not contact Kinzinger if any information was requested, the memo stated. Kinzinger did not immediately respond to a request for comment sent to him through the Speaker's Bureau contact listed on his personal website. Riggleman did not immediately respond to a request for comment sent to him through his LinkedIn page. This goes into Mike Davis. We can get into it more a little bit later. We'll do it in regular time interview. Which is like, I guess, 2:45. We'll have Jim come back and do this. All right. Apparently that's the plan. All right. So, because we did start earlier today, apparently that wasn't going prepared for that. And that's fine. We'll do it either today or we'll do it another time. I had to start it today. Just to let you guys know, and I was going to let locals know this, but I will say this. And many people probably do know this, actually. My producer and partner in crime also happens to have teaching credentials, and they look, it's not really budget cuts. It's like there's just nobody they can find to cover these special needs courses. And she's doing it, and it's difficult to work around, but we have to work around it. We have to make it work. All right. So with that in mind, we'll do that. Actually, let's go to this thing. Bum. Happy Witcher 3 Hearts of Stone 10-year anniversary. Oh, man. Best video game ever. Would you agree, Hitman Brody? Would you agree? Hearts of Stone, great DLC. Great DLC. I personally like Blood and Wine better. But Hearts of Stone, my son kind of liked Hearts of Stone. I wouldn't let him when it first came out, of course. I didn't play it when it first came out, but I did play it many years later when it came out on PlayStation 5 because my son wanted a PlayStation 5 that year for Christmas, which sometimes it's good to be the people's pundit. If you remember the year PlayStation 5 came out, you could not get them. You had to go to Sony, sign up for a Sony account, sign in, log in, right? And then get a link that put you in a waiting cache. And if you got one, you got one. If you didn't, you didn't. And they were announcing days that PlayStation 5 would be available and times. So you had to be on there, get in there at a certain time, and hope you got put in a cache where there was still an amount. Well, one of my fans so happened to work for Sony. And there was a PlayStation 5 that I could get from Walmart, but it said January 2nd delivery. So I wasn't going to, I think I even mentioned, I got a PlayStation 5 from Walmart, but I'm afraid it's not going to come in time. I think I might have actually tweeted that. And they contacted me and they said, look, man, I love the show. I love your polling. I love your work. Here's my employee cache. Here's the link to my employee cache. Sign in, but just get one. You can only get one. So I did. And it still said delivery wouldn't be till January or December 26th, maybe, or something. And I was like 3 days later, they were both at the door. I was like, get out of here. I got an extra PlayStation 5. I got to bring it back. But I never brought it back. Why? Hitman, because The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine DLC with Hearts of Stone was available that month for some crazy good deal. And I'm like, oh, I'm buying myself. And I kept the PlayStation 5. And I spent a good portion of the month of January sneaking in hours of The Witcher in between polling. I did, man. I totally did. And it was fabulous. I loved it. I did. I loved it. So there we have it. Witcher 3 Hearts of Stone 10-year anniversary. Wow, what a great throwback. I'm not a gamer, not much of a gamer. When I have some time, everyone likes to decompress, but I do have a teenage son. He then introduced me to God of War, which I think 3 was the one that was out that year. Atreus is still a little boy and mom dies. That one, that storyline, that was great. Ragnarok came after that. Great. I'll play stuff like that. And if you really want to challenge the Elden Rings or Skyrim or something like that, but I just don't have a whole lot of time to play these. So I miss The Witcher. The next game that I will be glued to is The Witcher 4 with Cirilla's story. I'll miss Geralt of Rivia. He's the man. I love Geralt. But so the new game, as far as I saw from the convention, the new game is a marvel of modern technology on how they use nano, what do they call them? Nanopixels, I believe, to create things like trees and the horse's muscles, and then it's also going to be included with AI. So like some of the behavior from people you interact with is AI generated behavior, and animals as well. It's crazy. So I will wind up playing that when I have time. And that's what happened with The Witcher 3. I just didn't have time for a long time. And so I didn't play it when it was new, but I did play it when they first released Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine together. And yeah, my God, it is 10 years. Jeez, I'm getting older. 44 years old. My God, I can't wait for Laura to come home so I can go to the gym. Jeez, I'm trying to fight it for no reason. I'm never going to be able to do it. You can't fight Father Time, guys. You can't. Let me read Hope for Better, and then we'll be back for the interview with Jim. My mom is kind of getting how scary our time is. She lived through the 1970s and she's seen these tactics before, but how do I feed her enough information in small bites to continue to move in the right direction? She'd never vote for communism or violence or gender, but convincing her it's coming from her side is hard to do. Okay, that's a good question. I would say this, and that's, by the way, I like your hope for the better is a good word, because I still maintain hope for the better as well. I think my views are shifting on how we're going to have to get there. I think that it's wise to remember that people don't like to try to be convinced that your ideas are right. They like to come to the conclusion that they've come to their own conclusion. All right. Just the same way people don't like it. It's like, you want to convince somebody to do something, make them think it's their idea. I would drop her little hints here and there. I would make sure that good information is available to her, because she's going to get a lot of bad information. Barnes and I explained this in the last What Are the Odds when we talked about the political violence study. The perversion of social science is getting really, 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 really bad. Even science, biological science, everything's being perverted. Now, by the way, there's a whole bunch of new studies that came out in the last 2 months, all very much concluding that something like transgenderism, for instance, is not a biological thing. It's not a legitimate physical disease, or it is gender dysphoria. Nah, a lot of it is a fad. A social fad by disturbed children. And that's what it comes down to, disturbed. And that's what the evidence not only suggests, that's what it shows. There's no chromosome, there's no this, there's no that. You're mentally ill. Sorry. And that's why identification is dropping. And the height of transgender identification came about a year after the COVID shutdown. So when we talked about deaths of despair, and when we talked about things like, what's the word? What is the term for when there's unintended consequences? This is what we meant. You just don't know what is going to happen. What's that? FNF? Yeah, it's FNF. We'll call it revival because I want to show them something. Revival. Okay. That's what we meant. You know, alcoholism, drug addiction, right? A whole bunch of social and cognitive development issues for young people who didn't go to school, stuff like that. Those are the unintended consequences that we were referring to. And this is one of them. This is one, because now it's on the decline again. And don't you find it funny that it's on the decline as we see numbers like this?
Revival across the country. Bible sales increasing over 40% since 2022. Religion app downloads surging nearly 80%. That increase since 2019. And Christian music Spotify streams up 50% from 2019. Our next...
Listen, I mean, we don't need the guest, but we don't need the guest. But you know, there's something going on. I will tell you this, like, you know, my own kids, they don't exactly go to a Christian school, guys. And there's a lot more, you know, interest. I would say there's more interest in spirituality, Christian specifically, than that I've seen in the past. But that doesn't mean confidence in church institutions. All right. And I think, you know, we'll do the Christmas poll again this year, and very clearly we'll study that as well. All right. Let me go for now until we do this thing with Jim. All right. And I guess it's about an hour and a half. Give me about an hour and a half to plug things together. I'll probably wind up popping on anyway and just doing like a part 2 of this. Okay. So hang tight, and you know, we'll see you guys in a little bit. All right. Part 1 down. Part 2 up. See you guys soon.